I've been playing Neverwinter since its launch on the Xbox One back in 2015. It's been my main MMO RPG for most of that time, and one of the funnest parts I've found in the game is, well, creating my character. What race I want to play as, what class, what I wanted my character to look like, customizations. But as a new player, what do you choose? What class? What race? What fits together? Well, I'm here to help you out with that. Welcome, Blade Knights. My name is Clawblade, and in this video, we'll be looking at each piece required to start building a character from the beginning. I'll also be giving my personal recommendations on preferred roles for each class, whether they're better as a tank, DPS, or healer. If you find this helpful, please leave a like, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, please consider subscribing. You can also find me at twitch.tv/theclawblade, where I live stream Neverwinter occasionally. So, with that out of the way, let's dive right in. So here we are at the main character selection screen, and as we get in, it's going to tell us to choose a race. Now, I'm going to be omitting any of the ones that are behind a paywall, like the Dragonborn, the Gith, the Moon Elf, the Aesir, because you don't really need to purchase a specific race to gain a really big edge. They don't have that big of a... They don't make that big of a difference, I don't find. But anyway, we're going to get into it. So we're starting off with the human. Very basic one. Jack of all trades. You get 250 points in all your stats. Nothing crazy there. It's pretty basic. And the +3 to any ability score. It's not bad. But most of the other races, actually all of the races, tend to come with +2 to any 2 rather than just a specific one. So if you're looking to get a specific stat that's like really up there, you could probably go with the human. But as I said, it's a jack of all trades race. Next, we got the Half-Orc, which is very decent for DPS. You got the critical severity up by 5%, which is very helpful if you end up giving yourself a high crit strike chance. The higher the crit strike chance, the more more crits you can make. And the higher critical severity, the more damage you deal. Your ability scores give you either +2 dexterity or +2 to either constitution or strength. So if you're looking for those high DPS characters, definitely dexterity and strength helps. If you're looking for a more tankier build, you could probably go with the constitution. But most of the time, half-orcs, especially for DPS, tend to go with either with dexterity and strength. And then to top it off, you get the 10% bonus to movement speed when you enter battle. Very nice if you're trying to get the drop on them before your rest of your party gets there. Next, we got the Wood Elf, which is another DPS style race with the 1500 critical strike. Very decent, especially at the beginning. You get the 10% resist to slow effects, which is really helpful if you're trying to zip around, trying to avoid some damage, and set up those support attacks. And then grants you +2 dexterity and either +2 intelligence or +2 wisdom. Next, we got the Sun Elf, which is great for either wizards or clerics, I would say, with the action point gain increased by 2%. Very nice. You're increased to resist control effects by 10%. Now, this is also pretty good for tank roles. But still, with the action point gain, I would say clerics could really benefit from this. And grants you +2 intelligence and either +2 dexterity or charisma. Next, we got the Dwarf, which is a more tankier race, especially with the 20% increased resistance to knock and push effects. Helps you stand your ground and take those hits a little bit more. Also gives you a nice, juicy bonus of 2000 defense. Great for tank builds. And then its ability scores are Constitution and either Strength or Wisdom. Next, we got the Halfling, which is another pretty decent, surprisingly decent tanky class. 1500 deflect, which apparently is going to be pretty useful in the next combat changes with stat changes. You're also resistant to more to control effects by 10%, which is not bad either for tanks. The dexterity could be better for a tank. I don't see too many tank builds using dexterity. But the charisma or constitution is pretty good. Next, we got the half elf, which, depending on the class that you're running, will give you an extra ability score for a specific stat, just depending on which class you run. It does give you either with +2 constitution and either charisma or wisdom. So at the start there, it's great for especially paladins with the constitution and charisma. So if you're looking for a tank, it could be beneficial to get that extra +1 into one of those stats. And also comes with critical severity. Gold bonus are increased by 1%, which the critical severity is not bad. Gold bonus, it's kind of a up in the air, kind of whatever kind of stat. And then you also gain the 1500 deflect, which is pretty decent for tanks, as I said. Next, we have the Tiefling, which is a pretty decent one for DPSs as well. Probably for their wizards or warlocks. The DPS, or the damage, extra 5% damage to targets below half health is pretty nice. It gets rid of those mobs faster. Comes with +2 charisma and either +2 constitution or intelligence. Also comes with Infernal Wrath, so you get a small chance to apply Infernal Wrath, which reduces the damage of targets' attacks. All right, and finally we have the Drow Elf, which it's an all-around decent one, nothing to be upset about. The Darkfire ability that has applying Darkfire to a target is not too shabby, reducing a target's defense by 2,000. Pretty nice debuff there. I don't think any of the other ones came with a substantial debuff like that. Ability scores are pretty good, +2 dexterity and either charisma or wisdom. Pretty good for those wizards out there or warlocks. The trance ability, not totally needed with the increased hit point regeneration out of combat. You got potions, you got healers. Increasing hit points or regenerating hit points outside of combat is not a mandatory thing. And that takes care of the races. So next, we shall move on to the classes. Now, the way I tend to create my characters is that I tend to select the class first, which determines the type of race that I'm going for. Because as you saw before, all of the races had benefits for types of stat bonuses, so like dexterity, charisma, all those ones. So each class is going to sort of benefit from those a little bit more than others. So for starters, we got the rogue, which is... Oh, I should probably also mention that each class comes with 2 different categories. So when you reach level 30 and you can choose your Paragon path, this is where you can choose whether your class or character wants to be a certain category, whether it be DPS, tank, or healer. So each one will have 2 selections when it reaches level 30. Now, some of them are pretty limiting to others. Others are pretty decent in terms of your selections. So for starters, we have the rogue, which is the first one, pure DPS. So both paths that it is going to be DPS. You're kind of locked into that category, that role. So its primary stat is going to be dexterity. So some of those races that did benefit from having a definite dexterity increase is going to be pretty useful on those. And then its secondary stats, or second most powerful, I should say, are going to be its strength and charisma. Next, we have the Cleric, which is going to be a DPS/healer role. So when you get to level 30, you can choose either damage or healing. Now, I've seen both types on the field before, and from what I can see, Cleric DPS seems to be the most popular, the most sought after, probably the most powerful, next to barbarians. But healers are definitely up there as well. So their primary stat is going to be wisdom, and their secondaries are intelligence and charisma. Next, we have the wizard, which is another pure DPS. So when you get to level 30, you have only the DPS choice. And not bad for control, for mob clearing. It definitely has some good AoE attacks. Its primary ability is, or primary stat, I should say, is intelligence, and then its secondary is wisdom and charisma. All right, next we have the ranger, which again is another DPS class. However, it does have the unique feature of it being able to switch from close range melee to long range arrow firing support, long range support abilities, which is pretty nice. Its primary is dexterity, which makes total sense for a ranger. And then its secondary is wisdom and strength. All right, next we have the warlock, which is, I would say, the most changed, in my opinion, from what I've seen, from what I've watched from other YouTubers. It's a DPS healer, much like the cleric. However, this one seems to be has gone back and forth between which one is more prominent, whether it be the DPS or the healer. Right now, I think it seems to be leaning more towards the healing side rather than DPS. But it's a balancing issue. But its primary is going to be dexterity, and then its secondary stats are going to go into wisdom and strength. All right, and next we have the Paladin, my personal favorite, my actual main in the game. You got your tank healer, your first tank on the list here. Probably my most favorite class to run, I have to say. This is just my personal opinion. This could be for anybody else. I've seen both. I've played as the tank much of my career on Neverwinter. I've seen healers just heal the crap out of people. It is probably one of the best healing units you could ask for. Primary is going to be charisma, and then secondaries are going to be constitution and intelligence. Very nice for the extra health and for the recharge speed. All right, next we have the Barbarian, which is one of the highest DPS, I would have to say. Probably that next to either the Cleric and possibly the Ranger. All right, and it's surprisingly, so it is DPS, it's also surprisingly a tank as well. I haven't seen too many players run as a tank. Normally it's preferred. People prefer to look for barbarians as DPS, but you're more than welcome to try tanks out and see if that works for you. So its primary stat is going to be into strength, obviously. And its secondaries are going to be constitution and dexterity. Now that's probably going to be determined by the role you play as. So constitution is probably going to go more towards the tanky side, whereas dexterity might be towards the DPS side. And then finally, we have the fighter. Now, the fighter is kind of a debatable one, in my opinion. I tend to see this as more of a tanky build, but I have seen many people use it as a DPS build instead. You could go either way. It has many great defensive and blocking abilities, such as the block and the dig in, as you can see there for sample powers. But I've seen many people run it as a DPS class and just dominate. Not so much more as the other classes like Barbarian, Ranger, and those ones, but it definitely can hold its own. And its primary is going to be Constitution, great for the tankier side. And its secondary is going to be Strength and Dexterity. So there we have it. Hope this video gave you a better understanding of how to put together your character, matching up races and classes for optimal creations, or to give you some creative ideas to have fun with. I did omit the customizations because, you know, that's your own personal preference. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, and if you want to stay updated on future videos, consider subscribing. Also, check me out on twitch.tv/theclawblade for weekend live streams. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Blade Knights dismissed.